Landscape architecture, like so many things in life and in the world, is a phrase that only has meaning within a certain context.
I'm all the way in Winnipeg, Manitoba to interview Emeka Nnadi, a landscape architect who runs his own firm. Emeka, welcome.
Well, thanks for meeting with me, and thanks for having this conversation. We are called the Nnadi Group. We operate out of 3 countries across North America, so Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And the Nnadi Group is actually a conglomerate of a number of different companies. The company I founded, as well as companies that I've acquired and added to the group, hence the name, the Nnadi Group.
Nnadi Group has designed 4 communities, 4 distinct neighborhoods in this area: Bridgewater Lakes, Bridgewater Forest, Bridgewater Trails, and Bridgewater Town Center. And they're all around us here. But this is Bridgewater Lakes. And between the 4 neighborhoods, that's 1,400 acres. Each of the 4 neighborhoods has a slightly distinct character, but they're all connected and they're all branded, co-branded.
You're a landscape architect. I'm also a landscape architect, but I think it's important for people to really understand, maybe break it down. What exactly does a landscape architect, or what is landscape architecture to you?
Landscape architecture, to me at least, like so many things in life and in the world, is a phrase that only has meaning within a certain context. And just to be philosophical for a moment, you know, you ask me, who am I? You know, who are you, Emeka?
Yeah.
Well, then the answer to that is contextual. Well, you know, let's see, who am I? I'm a husband, but I'm only a husband because I have a wife.
Okay.
I'm a father. I'm only a father because I have kids.
Okay.
Well, landscape architecture is an art form, but it's also a science. Landscape architecture is not engineering. Landscape architecture is not architecture, but landscape architecture has elements of architecture within its DNA and elements of engineering within its DNA. It also has elements of pure art, which is subliminal, subconscious joy.
This is an example of landscape architecture going from macro planning to micro detailed design.
I agree.
So the arc, the curvature of this bench was in direct response to the radius of this mountain.
Okay.
So when we spec this, nothing from Magdalene, nothing that we had would give us this exact curvature this way, right? And be this resilient. So this thing has been out here for 8 years. It's never been taken away. So it's heavy enough that it can't be stolen. It's durable enough that it deals with Winnipeg weather, and it is really just weatherproof and solid.
So landscape architecture is art, architecture, and engineering all put together with the specific context of the environment. But the spirit behind everything I do is the spirit of a founder. I inspire, I mentor, I lead. I think part of my job is to create, enforce, if you would, and continue to nurture the culture that we have as a practice.
I like the trellis too. Yeah.
It's all aluminum.
Does it need the support? Does it need that?
It does need that.
Okay.
That cabling to really
The cabling. Okay.
So the structural engineer worked with us on this.
Yeah.
And some teenagers will jump on this and suspend from it or even get on it. Now, we don't encourage that, but it's designed to take that kind of
I
use.
see. Okay. Okay.
So that's why we weren't taking any chance.
Okay.
And then on the flip side over here, you can see the weeping tiles for the excess water. You can see the water. Yeah. That. But you.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. But you can see that this is artificial turf.
Okay.
So that it manages, it handles the chlorinated water.
Okay. With splashes as opposed to grass.
As opposed to real grass. Okay. This is the only place in the entire project where we went artificial because it was necessary. And you look at the crescent moon shape and how the lowest points face the road.
Yes.
That's all by design to really welcome in and bring in the community into this space.
Yeah, kind of like a gesture.
Like a gesture, exactly. Exactly. We've had, I've seen people sunbathing here.
Okay.
You know, tanning, rather than going to the beach.
Yes.
They just come out of their homes and they've got some water here, but they're really enjoying themselves here. My kids love it. They go crazy running rings around this place.
How did you get into landscape architecture? What sparked your interest? Was it an uncle? I mean, something you heard? How did you get into landscape architecture?
So when I was younger, I really loved artistic expression. You know, and as a child, I was very introspective. I spent a lot of time by myself in my head, and you know. So by the time I was 14 or so, I was convinced that I wanted to be an artist. I had all the great artists' books. I knew Rembrandt, I knew Michelangelo, I knew them all. I knew Picasso. I was like, I'm going to be like one of these guys because they really inspire me. And I wanted to be able to do that. It was magical. It was like, how is this magician making me feel this way? And then I look at another painting, and how is this magician making me feel totally different? And in both cases, it's just canvas and paint. As I was finishing high school, I had the talk with my principal, and my dad was involved in this, the career planning talk. So you're going to go to university. What do you I said, I'm going to be an artist. Okay, wow. Why do you want to do that? And I explained just what I said to you now. And I said, okay, wow, okay. Well, you have excellent marks in art, and you also have excellent marks in technical drawing, drafting. Both of those things, you know, I had developed some good hand dexterity in drawing. But my principal said, the thing about art is, you know, less than 0.5% of artists are what contemporary society would define as successful economically, financially, in art. So you say you really like Picasso, you know, he died poor. But you know, there's many forms of art. And he said to me, architecture is a form of art. And the only difference is that, you get into architecture and you start to solve slightly more tangible, more present, more pressing problems while still being creative and artistic. And you're really good at technical drawing as well as art. So maybe think about that as a backup. Okay. And so when I was applying to go into university, I applied to get into architecture. And this was all still in Nigeria. So I got admitted, and I was young. I was a 16-year-old at the time when I started university. This was the University of Nigeria. And so I spent 4.5 years in university studying architecture in Nigeria. And that was bliss. That was bliss because I thought, okay, this is it. This is great. The practical. So really, what my principal said was, find something that is both creative and practical.
Yes. Okay.
Because you have enough of a skill set and a talent to bring both of those together. And back in those days, 1987. There was no landscape architecture, at least certainly not in West Africa, as a separate profession. Okay. Architects did everything that engineers didn't do. So I went into architecture, and 4.5 years after that, I was 21. I graduated with a degree in architecture from Nigeria. I actually grew up in Edmonton.
Oh.
And then moved back to Nigeria with my parents and did my high school in Nigeria. My high school and then my university. So I spent 10 years from when I was 10 to when I was 20 in Nigeria, after spending 10 years in Canada. So there's a bit of back and forth. And we moved to Winnipeg, and my dad got a professorial position at the University of Winnipeg, and my mom became an administrator at a college, and I applied to go do my master's degree. And I started off by applying to do my master's degree in architecture. And I didn't get admitted the first year I applied, and I didn't get admitted the second year I applied. now, while that was going on, I was working part-time at the University of Manitoba as a teaching assistant in the Faculty of Architecture.
Okay. But you couldn't get an admission to do your master's in the same university?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
In the Department of Architecture. So I was feeling quite deflated, and I also tried to get jobs as a draftsperson or as an intern architect in local firms. That didn't work out for me. But one fine day, I was in the faculty going to work as a teaching assistant, and I ran into the head of Department of Landscape Architecture. His name is Charlie Thompson. He's since retired, but a wonderful man. And he said, I see you in the halls all the time, and we haven't met. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Charlie Thompson. I'm the head of department. And I told him who I was and what I was about. And he said, are you in engineering? I said, no, I'm actually, I'm a teaching assistant. He said, yeah, but what program are you in? I said, well, I'm trying to get into a program, but I've applied for the past 2 years and I haven't gotten into architecture. I have an architectural degree from Nigeria. And he says, but you speak so fluently. And I said, well, I grew up in Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen, have been from when I was 2 years old, but I got my degree in Nigeria. And so he said, have you ever thought about landscape architecture? And I said, what is that? Okay, so that was me at 23. And he said, you have never heard of landscape architecture? I said, I mean, you say it now, and of course it makes sense to me, landscape and architecture. I can put things together, but I didn't know that was a thing. And he says, oh, we need to talk. Come, let's book an appointment, come see me in my office. And I went and sat with him, and he showed me projects, and he talked to me about landscape architecture. And I said, yeah, but it's not architecture. It's not the same thing. I want to do architecture. And he said, well, why do you want to do architecture? I said, well, I want to build stuff. He said, well, you can build a lot of stuff as a landscape architect. And I said, well, I want to build cool stuff. And he said, well, okay, well, hold on, let me show you some cool stuff. And he said, and I said, yeah, but I don't want to create a line. I don't want to separate things. I want to be holistic. And I've learned that architects get to do everything. So I don't want to just do a piece of it. And he said, well, you have a degree in architecture. I would argue that if you got a degree in landscape architecture, you can effectively become a bona fide urban designer. So you take those pieces and you put them together. And beyond that, Emeka, whatever limitations you put on yourself are limitations you put on yourself.
Wow.
So if you want to do what you describe, you can do it.
Wow.
So he was a wonderful man, very inspirational. And I said, wow, okay, I'm going to apply. And he said, we would love to have you. He had seen my portfolio, he had seen my stuff, so I applied and I got admitted right away. And so I was like, okay, we're doing landscape architecture now. We're doing urban design. We're doing it all. No limitations, no limits.
Absolutely.
We're just going to go for it. I finished my program in record time, and just before I graduated, I got an offer of employment in Chicago. And I moved to Chicago in January of 2000 as an intern landscape architect in one of the largest firms in the United States. So it was a winding road, and very fraught with hills and valleys and that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of self-doubt, and there's a lot of stress and a lot of kind of self-deprecation that comes with it when you think nobody's giving me a job, nobody wants to employ me, they don't even want me to do the master's program.
What helped you step away from that and be able to step away and look at it and say, no, I kind of don't agree? Either it's the ways, whether it's family support, I don't know, but for you, what helped you step out and say, no, I don't really believe that. I think I can do more, I am more.
Different things help at different stages in the journey.
Okay.
that day in the faculty building in the corridors of the University of Manitoba, the chance meeting with Charlie Thompson was pivotal, because he saw me and he looked through my angst and my self-deprecation. He said, well, what's your problem? You can do it. It's only a degree, and what you do with a degree is your business. But whoever told you that you couldn't do as a landscape architect versus an architect was fooling you. No, go on ahead. Go do it. You can do it. And that was the pivot.
Okay.
That helped me see the problem differently. When I went to Chicago, I started my job there. It was great, but I was literally the bottom of the barrel. I was the entry-level grunt who did all the drafting, who burnt the midnight candle, who did the overnighters or the all-nighters because my boss had a deadline and we had to give something to the client the next morning, and everyone else went home. But you want your job, you stay there. I went through all of that, and less than 2 years into that job, one of our largest clients with a big real estate portfolio called me on the phone, and I remember I'm the grunt, I'm the intern,
bottom of the
and every desk has a phone, but my phone never rings. Maybe it will ring when my mom calls me, and I say, Mom, I'm working. Can I call you back? And it's because nobody's calling me, right? So he calls me. And I dropped the phone because I'm like, what? And I picked it up again and said, you want to talk to my boss, right? Let me go get my boss, because you don't want to talk to me. He said, no, I want to talk to you. I said, well, why could you possibly want to talk to me? And I'm freaking out. And he says, son, I'd like to offer you a job. And just to show you how naive I was, I said, I don't think I can have this conversation at work. I don't think I can do this. You sure you don't want to talk to my boss? And I was so naive, and he said, no, I want to talk to you. He said, I was in your office 2 weeks ago, and your company made a presentation that you had prepared, and they called you in to explain certain things that you had done, thinking that I was in trouble, like I screwed up, but I was impressed at how you articulated the problem and how you attempted to solve it. So I'd like you to come work for me full time. So at that point, I wisened up just a little bit, and I said, okay, I really can't talk. I'm at work. Can I call you on my lunch break? Okay. He said, take down this number. It's my cell phone number. Call me back. I'm going to be waiting for you at 12. So I called him at 12, and he said, how much do you make? And I said, well, I make $27,000 a year, sir. He says, how about I double that?
No way.
Will that help your decision making? I said, sir, I'm going to need 2 weeks notice. He said, okay, now you're catching on. I knew you were a smart guy. Yeah. So I went from being an intern landscape architect to being a trainee real estate development manager with his firm. And he said, I just want your creativity, because we do all these multi-family housing deals. We do these large development projects, and I'm always hiring architects and landscape architects and this and that, but I don't have anyone on the inside who represents us, who understands both of those worlds. So you don't understand development, but you understand the creative side and the engineering side a little bit. So I'm gonna teach you about numbers and about value and how the business of what architects and landscape architects design happens, and you're going to teach us, the team, you're going to expose us to the creative side so that we are better versed at that. I was like, wow, how did I get so lucky? He said, you can do this. But before you get too cocky, son, I need to tell you something. And I said, okay, anything, sir. I'm a sponge. You bring it. And he said, you are the most educated. You're the most educated person on my payroll, including myself. Like you have 3 degrees. Nobody else, I hire 600 people. Nobody else has 3 degrees. You're the most educated person on my payroll.
My goodness.
And at the time I was 28, 29. I said, wow. And he said, and, so here's the punchline. Relatively speaking, you're still one of the worst paid. So, I was feeling pretty pumped about the first part.
Yes.
And then he said the second part, and I said, sir, I don't understand. Is this why I demand a raise? Like, what he said, no, I'm teaching you a lesson. What I want you to understand is that your academic credentials don't define who you are. And some of the people who I've hired who make more than you right now, they make more than you because they bring more value to the world. So he said, I just want you to know that your dreams are bigger than, or can be bigger than your current status, and bigger than your history, and bigger than where you came from.
Absolutely.
And your dreams have the right to fly, and have a right to exist, and have a right to be manifest. Don't get comfortable here. This is not, you haven't peaked. You haven't achieved everything you can in life, and none of us ever really do. We just stop at a point where we're comfortable, or we settle. But your dreams can be so much more than your current state or your history. So that was another takeaway. I've had many people in my life who just shown up and inspired me.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if I can do anything in the world moving forward, it would be to pay that forward and inspire other people.
Okay, now I see how that is coming full circle in some ways, in terms of what you're saying, what you're trying to do here.
Correct.
Okay.
I had a very painful breakup with that boss.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. He was a great, mentor in so many respects, but I met a girl. Yeah, every story has that, right? Like, if you're a girl, you met a guy.
Yeah, that's a good story. This is a good story. A little bit of it. Yeah, throw that in. A girl.
I met a girl. I was visiting my my home country. I was visiting Nigeria for a funeral, my grandmother's funeral, and while there, I met a girl, and she kind of swept my feet away. Not instantly, because I was only there for a couple of weeks, but I came back and we corresponded, and this just took on a life of its own. And one day I proposed to her, and she said yes. And I was like, oh wow. She said yes. Shit. Okay. How do I do this? Okay, so I went back to Nigeria. We got married. We got a wedding certificate. I came back to the United States, to Chicago, and said, okay, I'd like to apply for a visa for my fiance, and this was in 2002. See, Nigeria is on George Bush's blacklist. They are part of the axis of evil. So we're not processing any immigration applications from West Africa right now. I said, oh, really? Okay, well, how long do you think it'll be? Oh, it'll be about 10 years. Plus, you're not even American, so you don't have rights and privileges as an American citizen. So here's your folder. Best of luck to you, son. And so I came out of that and thought, okay, well, I have 2 options. Call off the engagement. Yes. Because I love my life in Chicago. This is, job is, or ditch the job and get the girl and move to Canada. Oh, because most of my life I'm Canadian, so just move back. My parents are here, my siblings are here, everyone's here in Canada, so move back to Canada and get the girl. So I struggled with that for a bit. My wife knows I struggled with it, so and then I walked into the office and I said to my boss, "Sir, I have something very difficult to discuss with you." He said, "What is it?" "Sir, I think I'm going to have to resign." And he didn't twitch. He just opened his drawer, pulled out a checkbook, pulled out a pen, clicked his pen, and said, "How much?"
For you to stay or for you to let you go?
No, for me to stay.
But it's all about money.
I said,
Come on.
sir, it's not about money.
Money,
You've
yeah.
been so nice to me. He said,
Yeah.
no, I mean, how much? I said, sir, no, you don't understand. It's not money. He put down the pen, put down the check, and said, I'm confused. Yeah. It's always about money. I said, no, sir, you've been more than generous to me. Like, I don't want a dime more from you. I really enjoy this job. But I met this girl. Oh, Lord. And then he let me have it. He said, you met a girl. You met a girl. You're going to ditch your career over a girl. You know how many men have been broken by girls? You're not paying attention to your career. What do you mean, a girl? Like, I would have accepted it if somebody doubled your salary the way I did, and you had to go. But okay, so why do you have to quit? Well, because she's not American, she's not Canadian, she lives over there. So then he did the math. He was like, how many people live in Chicago? I said, I don't know, 8 million. How many of them are female? I don't know, 4 million. How many of them are your type? 1 million. How many of them would like you back? Half. He said, okay, so there were 500,000 people that you could have married right here and not forfeit your job over. And
that's so weird.
He did math. So he's a very, very analytical, yes. Very, he has a bachelor's in commerce. He's not creative. Okay. He's very factual, very black and white. And so for him, this just didn't compute at all.
Wow. So
before that conversation was over, it ended with him saying, you know what? I don't accept your resignation. You're fired.
Are you kidding me? For falling in love?
Yeah, well, yes. Some people, that was the one thing that didn't compute for him.
Okay.
And you've met my wife.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so.
Smart move.
So, but you take from the good and you take from the bad. And I left I left Chicago. I moved back to Winnipeg. I didn't have a job. So I started again from the bottom. But now I wasn't starting from zero, I was starting with experience. Okay. And I was starting with certain things that were in my psyche that weren't there before.
Absolutely.
So I knew I could do it. I knew I had something to offer. I knew, if I had hit the level of success I'd hit before, I could do it again. So I did get a job at what was then the largest architectural and engineering firm in Winnipeg. And I was sort of their first landscape architect, urban designer, development consultant hire. Okay. So they hired me and they put me on a project that they had just won. And so they put me on that project and said, we were awarded this project from the provincial government and we're not really sure how to make it work. So since you have development consulting experience and you know how to put together performance and you know how to put these things together, and since you're a landscape architect and you know how to design communities and sort of larger projects and spaces, and since you also have an architectural background, so if all else fails, we can still put you to work with our other architects in the firm. We're gonna hire you. And so they did, and I thought that was great. And what happened right after that was that, the project that they hired me for grew and grew and grew, and other projects came along that were landscape architectural and urban design in structure. And I went in and said, I'd like to hire some more staff, specifically landscape architect staff, because there's more work coming in than I can deliver on solo. And they said, are you going to make us money? I said, well, I believe I can. I mean, it's just there's too much work, so we need more people with my training. Okay, sure. So I hired one, I hired two, and I hired three, and after hiring 3 people, I said, okay, now I'm going to hire someone who is more experienced than me. To co-mentor me. So I'm going to hire a more seasoned landscape architect. I tend now to have more experience understanding and managing development, but maybe not so much certain higher level landscape architectural issues. So I hired someone, and so our little team grew to about 5 or 6 people. And then very gradually, I got involved in invoicing and project management, and you know, I became aware of profitability and the margins, and I was part of the negotiations of staff salaries, my team's compensation. I became the person who lobbied for bonuses or for sort of other incentives for my team to perform at their maximum.
Plus, you also knew what was coming in because you also pitching for the work and stuff like that.
And I was pulling in. I began to pull in my own work. So that experience there, and I spent 8 years at that firm. That experience there really gave me the foundational experience I needed to start my own practice. And I really came to really love that company. And a few years into it, I said, what would it take, looking down the road now I'm a I can do it person, not a I can't do it person. So I'm curious to know what the process for becoming a partner is. And they said, oh wow, that's fantastic. You're exactly, you know, what we need. You work well with people, you manage your teams, you've been profitable for years.
Bringing in the work?
Yeah, bringing in the work, you know, that's great. You're really operating close to that level. Let's talk about it next year. I said, okay, great. Let's diarize that for my next year's annual review. Next year's annual review came. They said, yeah, that's great. You know what? This year wasn't a really great year. Let's talk about it next year. So that happened 4 years in a row.
No way.
And as I was turning 38, I just turned 38 and starting my 39th revolution around the sun, they announced 7 new junior partners, but not me. And I looked at the profiles of all 7 of those folks and I thought, where did I go wrong? I really thought that this, you know, and you know, there's ego and is this, am I just being proud? Am I just being selfish? And I went, no, I know that guy. He barely does one project at a time. He has no staff. He has no clients. He's not pulling in any revenue for the company per se. And that guy, I know him. He doesn't, I don't, okay, what possibly could any one of these 7 people have that I, like, is it, maybe it's my pride. Maybe I should, wait, no, I can't. I can't. They're all white males.
You said it.
I did say it. That's all I can think of. That's all that's obvious.
Yes.
You know, we all went to university around the same time. I know all of them. But I'm literally bringing in millions of dollars. And then the punchline, so after that big announcement and everyone clapped and everyone had some champagne and went back to their desks and started working. And I did. I just, you know, towed the corporate line. The real salt in the wound was that about 30% of the staff came by my desk and said, you didn't want partnership? Because it
was obvious to everybody.
It was obvious to everyone, and everyone thought he must have turned it down. There's no way. Like, he must have just maybe, you know. So I went home and I cried. You know, I held it together and I went home and I was like, you know, I look at the winding path of my life. I grew up in Edmonton, went back to Nigeria, came back here, you know, struggled to even do a master's degree. Okay, finally got that because someone like Charlie Thompson inspired me. Okay, I did that, and he was a really nice guy. I got pulled to Chicago. It was a great job. I, you know, started out that way and just learning from the bottom. And then this other guy, Mr. Higginbottom, hired me out of that and saw something in me, and you know, and I let that go. Came back to Winnipeg, got this great job, got the girl, started the family. I'm rising again out of the ashes, doing great, and for 4 years they're telling me yep, and then only to be blindsided this way. Is it my ego? What I didn't see this coming, and then, you know, I realized that you have to be okay with what really is and not what you wish it not to be. So that was in January of 2010. So after crying it out, I said, okay, so really, I have two options. I'm a big boy, so I can just suck it up and they pay me well enough. I can just go back to work and live out my days and retire one day with a pension and with, you know, whatever, and be like, hey, I ran the good race.
Senior associate.
Yeah.
To the end.
That was it. That was my title, actually. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't do it. I can't. I mean, I love the company, but no, that would break my heart into 1,000 pieces, and I would be a shell of a human being. And and what kind of father would I be, and what kind of person would I be if I, you know, if I didn't even believe in myself? So the option is, well, one option was stay there, senior associate to the end. Another option is get another job and hopefully find another place where people appreciate you better or differently, and take the experiences that you've built along the way and use that as a building block to the next step. And a third option is to do the brazen, daring, death-defying thing and just start your own thing. So, you know, you have that conversation with yourself in your head, and the angel on the one shoulder and the devil on the other, and the three of you have a three-way conference call. It goes hours and hours and days and days, and then finally you say, okay, made up my decision. And then the next conference is with your spouse, and you know, and I say, okay, so this is what I want to do. And she's like, really? Okay. Well, you supported me going through university, going through college. So here's the deal. I'll support you, but it's a limited time offer. So I know you, if you don't try it, you'll be 85, 90 years old complaining that you never tried that, that you never, you know, pushed yourself to that point. So I can't be married to you and not encourage you to try it, and try it the sooner the better and get it out of your system. So if it works, great. We won't ever have to, you know, point back to this moment in time. If it doesn't work, I'll give you 2 years and you go get a job.
That's tight.
I'll give you 2 years and then you go back and get a job, because so I said, okay, I'll take it. You know, 2 years, let's go. She said, you know, we only have one child now. He's a baby, he's an infant. He won't remember eating mac and cheese every day for a year. I will remember. So it depends on how the story plays out, you know, but I will support your, you know. So from January to August, I poker faced it. And then in August, I tendered my resignation. In that time, I had put together a little individual sort of consulting website. I had found a couple of clients who were going to hire me to do, you know, residential landscape architecture, and my idea was, no matter how tiny the castle was, as long as it's my castle,
absolutely, yes,
it's my kingdom, yes, I'm just going to be happy with that. So I didn't really have huge, big expectations. I just wanted to, you know, based on everything I had learned and experienced, I just wanted to, now let me just be in control of my own destiny. I tendered my resignation. Within 15 minutes of me talking to HR, I had 3 partners corner me and say, what you can't leave.
Please.
Here, we have the partnership papers right here.
Please.
We just need your signature and you're in. I said, guys, you know.
5 years late, man.
8, yeah.
8 years? I thought it was 4 years.
It was 5 years later.
Yeah, yes, 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, I'd worked for them for 8, 9 years.
Yes, but the conversation.
Correct.
Yes.
So I said, let's not do this. This is medicine after death. Yeah. This is insult on injury. Yeah, let's just respect each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just do it that way.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you can't. I can. And then they said, well, you if you steal any of your employees, we're going to sue you. And I said, but you can't. I don't have a non-compete.
Yeah.
You only lock partners into non-competes. So
oh, yes.
anything for me is fair game.
It's fair game. Oh my goodness.
I mean, right? Like you can't have it both ways. You can't eat your cake.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't worth partnership, and now you're threatening me with stuff. No, it doesn't work that way. But you know what? You can keep your staff. Because if I found good people, then I'll find more
some more. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're not in competition for 5 people in the whole world. It's okay. So I left, and I started working from my home. And I, maybe a year into working from home, I got a couple more medium-sized commissions. I hired my first employee, and I offered her more money than the entire project that we had just got.
Why?
Well, because my thinking was, you know, I offered her, at the time I offered her $42,000 a year, but that's over the span of 12 months.
Yes, you have time.
So I have time to make that money, but I do need her to work on this project with. I need someone, because I can't work on it and try to grow things at the same time. And this is somebody I had interviewed while at Smith Carter, and they had said to me, no, you've hired enough people. No, we're putting a freeze on your hiring. Oh. And I was like, but we're still making money. Like I need more people to be. No. So then she was the first one I called, because she's really quite talented. Okay, so she and I said, it's not. The good news is we talked last year, and I interviewed you then, and I'd like to offer you a job. The bad news is it's not with that firm. It's with me, myself, and I. So this is just the two of us going to work together. Are you cool with that? She's like, yeah, no, absolutely. So then a year later, one of my biggest clients while I was there looked for me, and they found out that I was no longer there, and said, we need you back on that project. I said, well, I can't be back on it. I left the firm. The firm will take care of you. No, they're not. It's not working out. We need you. We need your mindset, your attitude to things, your energy. You set this up with us from the beginning, and only you really know how it works. I said, well, no, that's flattering, but only I'm not the only person in the universe who can do this work. Like it, you know. And they, well, yeah, but we need you, because the firm that you left it with is not doing it. So one of those partners one of those partners I had an issue with when I left, I had to enter into a sub-consulting agreement with. So I worked for the firm that I'd left on behalf of my client for 6 months. And I got paid a lot more than I did as an employee to do that. And after 6 months, I said, okay, I've taken care of things. Everything is shipshape. Everything is good. Bye-bye. 3 months later, that client fired the firm and put out an RFP. Put out 3 RFPs for 3 big parcels of development in Winnipeg. And I responded to all 3 in competing with some of the largest A&E firms in the city. My old firm had 150 people in it. Stantec, everyone knows Stantec. They're bigger than God. And so other firms. And I won all 3.
Wow. And you did say something, A&D firms, architectural, engineering, and...
architecture and design firms. So,
okay.
So I won all 3. They called me and told me, Emeka, Nnadi, yes, we're calling from the province of Manitoba. We received your 3 bids, and we're happy to let you know that we'd like to award you with all 3. I dropped the phone and started crying. Picked up the phone again and said, I didn't quite, you said something and the phone fell, I'm sorry. And I had my one staff person sitting in the room with me, and they repeated it again. And I said, this is going to change my life. And they said, well, you've been great to work with for 10 years, and we really want to continue that relationship.
Wow.
And I said, but I only have 1 employee. There's no way I can do these 3 projects. They said, well, we've come to know that the troops are not important to us, it's the general. We need the right general, we need the right leader, we need the right project manager, we need you. So we're not concerned about your ability to staff this up, but we need your eyes on this project, on these 3 projects. So if you're okay with accepting these 3 commissions, we would love to award them to you. So that was a year and a half after I left.
Your clock, you had a year and a half into
my 2-year clock was I was still within the time frame.
Okay, good.
So at that point I had moved because I had 1 employee. I wasn't working out of my house anymore. I was renting a tiny little hole in the wall in the industrial neighborhood in Winnipeg. It was just a real
hole in the wall.
Just a real. The office for both of us was about half as big as this space that we're in. Just
Okay.
So with that commission, I moved downtown. I rented a spot just down the street from here, and I hired staff and I trained them. And many of the staff who are here came from then. This is more than almost 12 years ago now. And we began to build the business. And we were still working with that client. We're still working on till today. But we did that for a couple of years, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of really great energy. We did study trips where I was able to take most of the staff on the plane, and we'd go to, so we'd been to Seattle, we'd been to Chicago, we'd been to Boston, we'd been to New York, and we go to these places and seek out great examples of landscape architecture and and urban design together.
Yes.
And we experience those spaces firsthand. So it's not enough to read it in a book or watch a video, but to experience those spaces firsthand.
And is that one of your ethos? Is like
yes.
You as Nnadi Group, you want your staff to be exposed, and so that is part of the.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
As part of the ethos. That's again, when I talk about my life, I've traveled a lot. I didn't tell you that I lived in the UK for a bit as well, and in Amsterdam for a bit. So I have a real sort of global mentality towards things, and this ethos that you talk about now, not to digress, but it's so important that every time we start a project, one of the senior associates has to go to that site and experience it before we start designing it.
I like that.
We fly a drone, we walk it with the clients, we have a very immersive experience.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
Which is now, a big deal because we have projects in Mexico and all over the United States and all over Canada. We have projects in Vancouver. I just came back from a project in Quebec that I went to see the site as we begin to do the master planning. So we are all over North America, the continent. But the ethos is so, it's hardwired in that we know we don't start a commission without that being the first piece. And if a client isn't willing to sort of invest in that immersive experience,
I agree.
We walk away from the job.
I agree. And that creates a very different type of landscape, a very different kind of space.
Correct.
Once you go and experience it firsthand, walk those streets, experience it, Yeah,
because part of that ethos says that we're actually not burning something onto the ground as much as we are learning what it's telling us.
You kind of want to reveal it.
Exactly.
Opening the layers.
Want to reveal what's already there.
Yes.
So that first set of commissions from that client opened the door. And hindsight is a miraculous thing, but foresight can be relatively painful. So hindsight. The partnership that I didn't get, that I wept about, in candid terms, was give us $80,000 and it will give you 1.5% of the firm, versus what was my meager savings at the time, $10,000 to my name, and I owned 100%.
Look at that.
And the 100% was invested and it yielded so much more.
That was fascinating, to say the least. Thank you for opening your story to us, and thank you for the encouraging words. I mean, what you have been through is amazing, and it's no surprise that you are where you are. So congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for wanting to have this conversation. I appreciate it.